Dispel these myths about real estate investing. In this episode, we are going to address the question, what mistakes do most people make when investing in real estate? I'm Doug Andrew. Put your seatbelt on. You're going to be blown away. So I'm in my radio studio, and I've been blessed to have a radio show that's been broadcast nationally now for 12 years, and I've written several books. My very first book I titled Misfortune, because of the fortunes people miss out on when they simply don't know what they don't know. And the subtitle is Dispel the Money Myth Conceptions, and Isn't It Time You Became Wealthy? And so in this series of episodes, I am referring to an article that I wrote called 31 Flavors of Missed Fortune. 31 reasons why people miss out on fortunes, because it sort of coincides with Baskin-Robbins having 31 flavors. Well, folks, this episode is going to talk about the real estate mistakes that most people make. And I'm going to go through these 5 major mistakes one by one, and help you sort of get a glimpse of why people make these mistakes. And then at the end, I'll show you how you can learn more by reading articles or watching other episodes or reading some of the books that I've written about these topics. So this is a big one. Most people try to own their home or buy a home, and that's smart. And that's actually one of the mistakes many people make is they rent their entire life instead of owning. So I would encourage you that you take ownership in a home as soon as you possibly can. And one of the myths is that you have to have this huge down payment to put down. Can I just share a secret with you? I'm 67, level 67. I don't say that's my age. I'm at level 67. And I have bought numerous properties. I have bought homes. I have built homes. I have never, ever paid a down payment out of my pocket for any piece of real estate I've ever acquired. Did you hear that? I've satisfied down payments, but not with any of my money. I want to keep my money liquid and safe. I learned that lesson the hard way. And I'll share that story with you. But it's myth that you have to have a big cash down payment. No, you have to satisfy a down payment if you're going to go conventional. If you go FHA or whatever, or veteran, you don't even need a down payment. You can qualify without that. But even at that, I do not use my money to satisfy the down payment. I keep it liquid and safe. Also, a lot of people think you have to have a good credit score. Well, that helps. But sometimes I have bought properties or helped people buy properties with no money down and no credit checks. No credit checks. And people go, really? How do you do that? That is disclosed in several of the books that we've written, Missed Fortune and Millionaire by 30, that was co-authored with my 2 sons. Their first 2 homes, they bought in a recession, no money down, no credit checks, and those stories are in there on how to do that. But that is a mistake right off the bat, is not owning a home at least, and maybe other properties if you can obtain them with no money down, no credit, that those are not the roadblocks. So those are myths. Let's talk about the lazy, idle equity that begins to accumulate in the house. Now, people go, what? What'd you say? Yeah, I call it lazy, idle equity that's accumulated in your house. And I learned this lesson the hard way. So let me tell you a story. So clear back in 1978, my wife and I had been married 4 years at that point, and we were building our 3rd home. It was a beautiful 6,400 square foot home with cathedral beam wood deck ceilings, and it was up on a mountain hillside, and we could watch the deer and elk bed down in the scrub oak below us. We bought, or built that home rather, with no money down out of our pocket, okay? Back then in 1978, it cost about $150,000 to build the home, and when we were done, it appraised for $305,000. We thought we had the world by the tail. We're only into this house with a mortgage of $150, it's worth $305. Whoa! People say, you doubled your money. Well, about 4 years later, it was because of the condition in America in 1980, the oil crisis, energy crisis, Houston, Texas, 16,000 homeowners lost their homes in foreclosure during that oil energy crisis. Well, that recession rippled throughout America, and actually what happened is there were 3 supervisors in the firm that I was working for that were greedy and they were dishonest, and when that was discovered while they were investigating these 3 yahoos, they froze all of our income. I didn't have any income for 9 months. It was just accumulating in this account, in an escrow account. So I ended up not having the money to make my mortgage payments on that house. My wife and I, we sold a timeshare at a ski resort for triple what we paid for it. And we brought our delinquent mortgage current, and then we got behind again. We sold a duplex that we owned, and we took that equity and brought the delinquent mortgage current. But not seeing any other liquid assets, we put the house on the market. We'll build another house. So we listed that house for $295,000. It had a bona fide appraisal of $300,000. Hey, when there's more supply of homes than there is demand, what happens? Values plummet. We lowered the price down to $285,000, $275,000, $265,000, $225,000. I'll never forget the day my wife and I walked into the county courthouse and watched that beautiful home get auctioned off in foreclosure proceedings. I went out in 2 days and bought another home with no money down and no credit. But what did I learn? That $150,000 of equity in my house was worthless if I couldn't get to it. When you need the money the worst, it's the hardest to get. So I learned that real estate equity, home equity, is not liquid. It's not safe. The house can go down in value, and it does not earn a rate of return in the house. It's going to do whatever it does. If your house goes up in value or down in value, it does that regardless of how much equity is in there. But see, I learned to keep my equity separated from that point forward to have liquidity, be able to access the money if I got in trouble or laid off or lost my income. A safety of principle, so when real estate values go down, I don't lose because my money's not in the property, and I earn predictable rates of return that are double or triple what the mortgage is costing. A mortgage at 4.5% tax-deductible interest is only a net cost of 3%. I earn 9% in my favorite vehicle, which I call the laser fund. And the laser fund, I've earned 9, 10%. How much more is 9 than 3? 300%. On $1 million, I make $90,000 tax-free. The mortgage only cost me, for $1 million mortgage, $30,000. Now, this is one of the biggest mistakes people make. They don't understand how to manage their real estate equity to have liquidity, safety, and predictable rates of return. How to leverage, but leverage without liquidity is stupidity. So what are the other mistakes people make when they buy real estate or own real estate, especially on their home? Well, the second bullet point here is sending extra principal payments against your mortgage, trying to get your house paid off, or paying too large of down payments based upon what I just said. See, if I had way more than the required down payment that I'm going to satisfy one way or another, I wouldn't do that. See, people think, well, I need the equity out of my previous house and to put in a huge down payment so I'll have a lower mortgage because lower mortgages mean lower costs. Nope, because nobody was taught what opportunity cost meant, maybe. See, opportunity cost is when you tie it up into a house that's going to go up or down in value regardless of how much equity is in there. You're giving up the ability to have that equity earn a rate of return on top of whatever your house does. Like I said, I keep my real estate equity separated. And it's over here in this pocket, so to speak, earning 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, sometimes higher, but I usually average at least 9 or 10%. I'm earning 10% rate of return on my real estate equity, the down payment I didn't unnecessarily put into the property, while I am paying interest at a lower rate. Did you understand what I just said? You're earning compound interest tax-free if you use the right vehicle. Over on the mortgage in this pocket, you're paying simple interest tax-deductible. So if the tax-deductible interest is at 4.5% on my mortgage, in a 33% tax bracket, it's only costing me 3%. On $1 million mortgage, that's only $30,000. Over here on $1 million of real estate equity that's not in the property, if I'm earning 9%, that's $90,000. $90,000 is 300% more than $30,000. I mean, would you hire an employee for $30,000 that made you an extra $90,000? Yeah. And so this is how to become your own banker. But in my very first book, I wrote a chapter called The $25,000 Mistake, being made by millions of Americans. Now, That was clear back in when I wrote my first book and released it at the turn of the century. Now that would be a $100,000 mistake. Here's why. Most people think that the best way to get out of debt is sending extra principal payments to the mortgage company, or sometimes, I remember one time talking to 3 finance professors at a major university, and they said, we teach all of our students here in the 400 classes why they should take out a 15-year amortized mortgage instead of a 30-year amortized mortgage when they buy a home. I said, really? Why do you do that? And they looked at me like, duh? Maybe they meant Doug, I don't know. But they go, if you just bite the bullet, you pay a higher mortgage payment, you'll save a grundle of interest and you'll have your house paid off in 15 years. And then you sock away what you used to pay in mortgage payments. You'll end up with this much money in 30 years in a tax-deferred IRA. I go, well, that's good. But gentlemen, haven't you ever taken the differential between a 30-year amortized mortgage, which is less, and the 15-year amortized mortgage, which is higher? Take that difference plus the tax savings you will achieve during the first 12, 15 years of a 30-year mortgage instead of a 15-year mortgage. Don't spend that savings. Have a system where you put it over here in this pocket, compounding, tax-free. What's tax-free? So I explained it to them. They said, we've never done that. They were flabbergasted. There was enough money over here in this pocket, which is where I put my serious cash in the laser fund where it's liquid and safe, and earning 9% or more is what I've averaged. There was enough money over here in this pocket to totally pay off the 30-year mortgage in 12 and a half years. 2.5 years faster than the same money they were telling their students to pay off a 15-year mortgage. And by socking away the difference over into this, at the end of 30 years, they ended up with $250,000 more money than the way the finance professors were teaching their students. So these are huge mistakes, so I'll summarize them. So based on these 31 flavors of misfortune, there are 5 under your home or other real estate. Not employing the lazy idle dollars that accumulate in your property as that equity, where it could be earning a rate of return greater than even your house is appreciating. Number 2 is sending extra principal payments against the mortgage, thinking you're getting out of debt the fastest way. Nope. Paying larger than necessary down payments or down payments out of your own pocket. I satisfy down payments, but I've never paid a down payment with my money that I want to keep liquid. Paying unnecessary capital gains is another problem where people do not need to do that if you do a 1031, or maybe you can set up other tax strategies. And these are some of the examples of people who have even downsized or been able to increase the house but relocate and use that lazy idle equity to turn it into an extra $50,000, $100,000, or $200,000 a year of income instead of being trapped in the property. Not realizing that without down payment, you can purchase properties without having to have a huge amount of cash or high credit, and then not even owning a property, renting instead. Don't make those mistakes. Watch this episode here. I want you to be able to get a free copy of my book, The Laser Fund, so you avoid these mistakes.